Now today for me is a day of great romantic ceremony, for it's a long-awaited opportunity to share with you the delight of driving a pure British sports car. Now, whilst having driven some of the world's finest cars over the years, this is one I have yearned to drive, yet never had the opportunity to until now.
So here we have it, the Lotus Elan, at last, the Plus 2. Now this car is based on the original Elan, so it's got the same chassis, it's just 2 foot longer actually, and about 7 inches wider. When the car came out, it was actually for sale for about £1,223, and that was about £500 less than an E-Type Jaguar at the time. This particular car, however, was meant to be a little bit more upmarket. It was meant for those up-and-coming families with a couple of extra seats in the back for the children, better build quality than the Elan, and was meant to be the kind of car you could drive for 1,000 miles in comfort, or 4 of you in place. Small manufacturers didn't always have an opportunity to have all the resources to build everything they wanted, so they had to kind of borrow from others. So believe it or not, this windscreen was taken from a Ford Capri. Just looking at the front end of the car, aerodynamic as it is, this bumper was actually taken originally from the Ford Anglia. Now, this was a time before things got really angular in shape, before we had all the razor edge type of style. This is still sleek, it's still beautiful. You can see we've got an extended boot line because obviously it needs to have more space for more people. But talk about innovation, this rear bumper was actually taken from an old Wolseley. But with Lotus, of course, it's all about driving. And this is where we turn to the genius of Colin Chapman. Because Colin Chapman to Britain is a bit like Enzo Ferrari is to Italy. And Colin's concept was all about lightness and efficiency. So let's go and experience what his production is like to drive. I have to say, one of the pleasant surprises is just how much room there is once you're actually behind the wheel. Now I'm 6 foot tall, and straight away it feels really comfortable, and there's a lot of really good all-round vision, so it's actually been quite carefully thought through, and it feels sporty, very driver focused, a bit like being in the cockpit of an aeroplane, but very functional too. Simple, functional, focused, exciting. But there are certain things about a real sports car that you can tell just while the car's stationary. Let's just try the gear change. Now, Lotus are phenomenal for their gear changes, and they were even then. This is a Ford-based, and already you can see that there's a lovely, lovely tight feel to that. Can't wait to try it on the road. Similarly, the steering, I love this wheel. It's just beautiful. You sit very comfortably. You feel ready to drive. Clocks, yep, beautiful, all there. You can see everything, oil, temperature, everything you need to see. The rev counter's right where it needs to be, right on the sight there of your eyeliner as you're facing and just looking down to make sure all those revs are working. Most important thing is to see how all this comes together on the road. So let's go out and drive it. This particular Plus 2 is not the Plus 2S, it's a 1968 car, so it's the Plus 2. So it's not necessarily the most powerful one, but at the same time, with the Lotus it doesn't really matter. It's the engaging driving experience which matters the most. And what I'm enjoying about the car is the rawness of it. It's something which is just sort of totally engaged with the road. You can feel everything, but not too much, which really shows just how well Mr. Chapman and co developed the suspension on the car. Because it's actually quite a comfortable ride, but at the same time, you've got that magical combination of comfort and road feel. Comfort and road feel. And it gets better and better with speed. Now I'm on a 60 mile an hour country route, It's quite bumpy. But here's the essence of Lotus for me. They've got this magical quality, which they even seem to have had in 1967, of producing a performance car that can be comfortable, yet it's got all the handling finesse that you need. It's just like genius in 1967. If this was a modern car, I'd still say it was good. So we've talked a little bit about the suspension. Another thing is the gear change. The gear change is just lovely and slick. So we've got a lovely kind of slick feel to it here. Along with that, we've got great throttle response. So I can control the speed on and off the throttle with just light touches. So we've got the lightness, we've got the suspension, we've got the slick gear change. The engine's in the right place. It's rear-wheel drive. There's great balance and feel to the chassis and the suspension. Another thing that makes a sporting car really good is to have just the right steering feel. Now I know most cars these days, probably all actually, are power steering cars, but this one is not, and I think it really is better for it, because in a straight line you've just got the right amount of tension and feel in the wheel. It's not too light, not too heavy. And when you point it in a direction, it goes in that direction. And there's nothing in between to compromise the difference between when you apply that steering lock and what actually happens to the front wheels. Kind of like this car. With the Lotus, handling is important. You can actually rotate the car gently on the brakes with the steering engaged, because the chassis is just talking to you all the time and saying, well look, I'm giving you all the information you need to drive this car well. So if you cock it up, it's up to you. There's a bend coming up and it's like, how am I going to do this and how do it well? So on the brakes, into gear, just get a nice angle and then come through. Oh, look at that. Feels beautiful, feels beautiful. There's just enough feel to the brakes as well. Don't forget, I mean, we're talking about 1967 here. We're not talking about 2020 standards. The magic of the Lotus formula is really feel where it matters most. So let's work through that. Feel when you press the throttle. You get the oral sensation of the pleasure as well. Feel when you get the gear change. Yes. Feel with the steering. Speed doesn't really matter anymore. It's the whole process of enjoying that driving engagement. And that's what I can settle down and do here for many, many miles. I think one of the things that any of you who chooses to buy or own one of these cars would appreciate is that it's the naturalness of the whole thing that is the selling point, really. Everything you do, you feel it's in harmony, it's good, and it's confidence inspiring. And I want to keep driving a lot more.